I'm Olivie Blake, the author of Masters of Death, which is out now, and I thought I would just talk to you a little bit about the mythologies that I used and that were inspiring to me in this book. So the first one that comes to mind is Viola Marek, who is an aswang, which is a type of vampire from the Philippines. I am biracial Filipino, and an aswang is something that, like, my mother is terribly afraid of. They're shape-shifting vampires, so it's a very different lore than the, Dracula type of vampire. And they can shapeshift into a few different creatures. Vi turns into a cat. It's something that happens at night, and sort of the folklore around aswangs is that they eat unborn babies. But they are very hospitable neighbors, so that if they live in your little community, then you're fine and you're safe from them, but they don't like outsiders. But what is super interesting about aswangs is that the American military weaponized the superstition about them in order to, let's say, urge the indigenous Filipino community into compliance. So that's a fun little story about colonialism. And then there is Iðunn, who is the Norse goddess of, I think, technically the goddess of youth, but I kind of came around this backwards. I already knew that I wanted a character who was not just naturally immortal, and so that's what led me to Norse mythology. There are no actual immortals in Norse mythology. They consume these golden apples that Iðunn grows, or is kind of held captive by. She was placed there by her husband. You know how it is. We're really getting into the deep stuff here with mythology. So the golden apples in Norse mythology are what keep the various gods young until sort of the end of the world. I think some of that has been covered by Marvel, so maybe you know some of it. But I knew that I wanted a character who was seeking something that they felt they deserved, something that felt earned to them, but wasn't just given. It wasn't something that was like in their blood. So that was something I sort of came around backwards to. Like, how could we find an immortal, but through a series of leverage? Yeah, let's call it leverage. Persephone is a big one. Persephone is like very major in the zeitgeist right now, / a lot of the time, I think. I think we kind of moved from paranormal romance to like these many retellings of Persephone because we can make Hades hot. I mean, Hades is a wife guy. That's fun. I've worked with Persephone a few times in fiction just because it's like relatively known. I mean, like, Persephone is how we learn not to take food from the underworld, which is a really important lesson. And it was just something I thought it would be kind of funny to use her as a person that Brant, the character who can travel through all the other worlds, has met and has made an arrangement with. Actually, in Masters of Death, they have a pretty funny deal, and if I were to write fan fiction for this book, I would write them continuing to make deals. And lastly, Volos is not based on anyone, although pretty much every mythology has some sort of like demon king situation, someone who represents like sin and temptation, but I didn't, as you may know if you've read many of my books, I don't like to think of like pure evil as a thing. I like to think more of like vice and the way we act on it being like, we would get this sort of person who's feeding on the horrible things that happen as a result of temptation and pain, but who is actually like pretty neutral. He's like, I just want to be king. I just want to wear a crown. Like, who doesn't? Volos, very relatable. So yeah, I just needed a bad guy and kind of made him up. But I liked the idea of a demon like sort of feeding on what is already naturally there, what's sort of naturally human and painful about being human. I'm a mythology girly. I've definitely, this is the sort of thing that I love. I've always read a lot of folklore, and I think I wanted to write something that had the feeling of a fable. And I guess the only other significant thing, which is not mythology, but is the Godson of Death story. I originally read Godfather Death is the title of the story by the Brothers Grimm, and it ends very differently, but I really liked the idea. The sort of impetus of the story is that these, peasants who are dying and they need to pass their son off to someone, they don't want to give it to an angel or a devil. They just want someone who's neutral, who will take care of their baby, and so they give the baby to death. And I kind of really liked that idea, that something that happens for everyone, that's this sort of universal human experience. So that was kind of what started this, but I gave them a slightly better relationship than the one they have in the real story. You can read it if you want. So once again, this book is out now. You can read it if you want, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. So follow along with Book Breaks Book Club, and please enjoy your read.